His will is that every friend should remain with his own religion. Bruno Gröning never intended to found a new religion. The Catholics should stay in Catholic circles, the evangelicals or Protestants should go to their respective churches, the Orthodox should stay Orthodox. There are Buddhists and Mohammedans in the circle of friends, which is non-denominational.
Es ist überkonfessionell.
Bruno Gröning was born on May 30th, 1906 in Gdansk, Oliver, the son of a bricklayer foreman. Even as a child, he was able to influence people and animals in a calming and healing way. Upon finishing elementary school, he began a commercial apprenticeship which lasted 2.5 years. However, his father wished him to become a carpenter. This apprenticeship was also not concluded. Only 3 months before the end, his employer was forced to close the shop due to lack of orders. During the years following, he held various jobs. He was drafted into the Second World War in 1943. In 1944, he was wounded, and in 1945, he became a prisoner of war in Russia. From this, he was released to West Germany in December of the same year. He found an apartment in the Hessian town of Dillenburg and together with other refugees from Sudetenland founded the Relief Organization for Refugees. In March 1949, Bruno Gröning's fate led him to Herford in Westphalia. Here he was moved overnight into the public spotlight when it became known that he had healed a boy who had been given up by several doctors and medical professors. Within a few days, hundreds and thousands of health seekers converged on Herford. They all hoped to be healed by miracle Dr. Gröning. And in fact, 3 whole months the incomprehensible happened on the Wilhelm Square. The plain man from Gdansk made illnesses simply disappear, and the doctors were powerless. In the yard there was a garden which was already completely crushed underfoot. There were sick, lame, disabled people and others, and suddenly I could hear loud crying and shouting, and I saw that the lame could walk there. This was at the same time, we reconstructed it later, that Bruno Gröning was healing at Velbert, where healings took place as well. It lasted 2 hours, and then he came back. I have to say that tears came to my eyes. That's how deeply moving it was. He looked at me and said, "So there you are." Well, what did I say?
Die vielen Menschenansammlungen auf dem Wilhelmsplatz habe ich erlebt. Ich habe erlebt etwas, was so aus der Vernunft nicht zu erklären war.
I have witnessed the many crowds of people on the Wilhelm Square. I have experienced something that cannot be explained by human reasoning. Initially, I was deeply moved by the way these people treated one another so peacefully. When he appeared on the balcony, there was a special quietness. I would call it a peace of mind, but inherent in it was a certain tension. When one experiences that human beings, who obviously could not move at all, suddenly got up and walked around, that they threw away their crutches, I have unquestionably been privileged to experience things happening there that were inexplicable, but could be proven. These healings differed essentially from any other method of treatment.
Und herumgingen, nicht, dass sie ihre Krücken wegwarfen. Und das habe ich ganz ohne Frage so bei ihm erleben dürfen, dass dort Dinge geschahen, die nicht erklärbar waren, die aber festzustellen waren und die sich ganz wesentlich von den sonstigen Behandlungsmethoden unterschieden.
Due to pressure from the medical profession, the authorities intervened and forbade Bruno Gröning to continue his healing efforts. He had to leave the town of Herford. In June 1949, the magazine Review engaged the physician and psychologist Professor H.G. Fischer from Marburg to make Bruno Gröning an offer to have his method of healing academically examined in an effort to make it possible to practice his healing once again. Bruno Gröning accepted the offer, and at the end of July, a meeting took place in Heidelberg between him and the local university clinic to undertake an academic investigation into the phenomenon Gröning. The results were amazing for the scientist. Under their critical eyes, astonishing healings took place. In September of 1949, everyone was talking about the Traberhof in Rosenheim. Thousands and thousands of human beings came there. They regarded Bruno Gröning as their last chance of being healed. It was a grand testimony of the needs of the times, but it was also a devastating testimony of science's inability to get misery and illnesses under control. Materialistic thinking had hit rock bottom. The healings at Traberhof pointed to a new beginning where man once again finds the way back to God and realizes that without him he is lost. Here a higher power was at work, a power that surpassed the understanding of human reason. Bruno Gröning stood on the balcony, spoke to the people, and the unbelievable happened. The lame threw away their crutches and could walk again. The blind could see.
Und dann hörte ich als erstes eine Frau schrie.
And then the first thing I heard was a woman. She suddenly shouted, Mr. Gröning, many thanks. And she took her walking stick and threw it away into the crowd. I can walk again. And next to me there stood a man. I don't really know, but it seemed he wanted to go away. But suddenly he jumped over this paddock, using one hand only. I figured he was about 50 years old, and he jumped over the paddock. I said to him, well, you are in the wrong place here. What are you doing here? He laughed, came back, took his wallet out and said, look at this. It was a Friday when I was there, if I'm not mistaken. So he said, I was here last Sunday. At that time, I was still a 100% disabled war veteran with 2 crutches. And then he showed me his identity card, which proved that he was 100% war disabled. And he said, and since then I can walk. And this man, after 45 days, could jump over the paddock fence. It had to be 1 meter high so that the horses don't jump over it. He just jumped over it with only one hand on the fence.
Und wissen Sie, wie ich denn da ankam und aufstieg? Also da habe ich gedacht, also sowas gibt's nicht.
Warum?
Also da waren Menschenmassen draußen.
When I arrived there and got out, I thought, well, these things don't happen. There were masses of people outside of this Traberhof. Yes, thousands of people, I would say, in wheelchairs, lame people, children who were crying with abscesses. It was emotionally very stressful for me. Yes, a sea of misery. And these poor people, they all crowded around the large glass panels of the Traberhof where we were. It was a large hall with window glass all around. I finally got in, but with a lot of pushing and shoving. At the front was a large stage. Before it were the people in wheelchairs. The lame and the blind were sitting on chairs. I sat in one of the rows. I don't think Mr. Gröning arranged that, but his helpers arranged it so that he could walk through the rows wherever he wanted to go. He wanted to achieve mass healing. Before this, there had been some individual healings. I saw with my own eyes that these people, I'm sure there were 3 at least, got out of their wheelchairs and walked. I saw this.
Und Schritte machen konnten. Das habe ich gesehen.
Up to 30,000 health seekers came to this place on a daily basis. Mass healings and distance healings took place, and many people found their belief in God again through Bruno Gröning. After the time at Traberhof, Bruno Gröning moved to the Bavarian mountains to check out various offers of so-called healing centers. Although he received many offers, none of them led to a realization of his plans. Several smart businessmen, under the guise of helpers, but really only interested in making money out of the phenomenon Gröning, prevented the realization of these plans. At the same time, he continued trying to find new ways of working in an orderly and legal fashion. Many different associations were being founded to enable him to work freely.
Jedoch bewirkten sie nur das Gegenteil, da die Vereinsobmänner nicht in seinem Sinne handelten. Jene, die an ihm nur verdienen wollten, erwiesen sich als seine größten Feinde. Sie setzten alles daran, das Vertrauen der Heilungssuchenden zu Gröning durch das Verbreiten von Lügen und Verleumdungen zu zerstören. Und doch konnten sie nicht verhindern, dass auch weiterhin große Heilungen geschahen.
Ja, also das Herausragende war eben, dass da ein Mann reingetragen wurde, der nicht laufen konnte, wurde hinten in den Saal gelegt.
The amazing thing was that a man was carried in who could not walk. He was laid down in the back of the hall, and Bruno Gröning made his speech. Suddenly someone said, "Mr. Gröning, there is someone lying down in the back." He didn't particularly react. He said only in passing, "I don't forget anybody," and continued with his lecture. After Bruno Gröning had finished, the man in the back got up suddenly. He went over to the bar and ordered a schnapps. Yes, it was so unbelievable that a man who was unable to walk and had to be carried in was able to get up and walk away a few hours later.
Die Frau Weber, die war seit Geburt ihrer Tochter bettlerisch an für sich in ihrer Ausführung gelebt. Fast 25 Jahre lang hatte die dort, war sie bettlerisch. Die konnte nur aus dem Bett geholt werden, im Stuhl gesetzt und auch wieder hingebracht.
Mrs. Weber had been bedridden ever since giving birth to her daughter. She was practically lame. For almost 25 years she was bedridden. She had to be moved from her bed to a chair and then back again. During this time one heard about Gröning. I'll say it now, as it was commonly said. A miracle doctor lives in Hereford by the name of Gröning. The family Weber owned a bicycle shop, a motorcycle shop. They wanted to do something for their mother and decided to try inviting Gröning to come to them. It did happen. After a while he accepted and came with 2 companions. Mrs. Weber was sitting opposite him, about 3 meters away. She sat on the other side of the table in a chair where they always put her. All of a sudden we heard him say, "Mrs. Weber, get up now and come here. Walk." Yes, Mrs. Weber got up and walked towards him. At that moment, when we became aware of it, she gave a cry of joy, and he said, "You can walk, come here." And then she walked over to him.
Und kommen auf. Ja, die Frau Weber stand auf und lief ihm entgegen. Und in dem Moment, wo wir das mitkriegten, die Weber macht einen Freudenschrei und er sagte, Sie können laufen, stehen Sie, kommen Sie, da ist er auf ihn zugegangen.
Bruno Gröning had only one goal, to help suffering mankind, but his enemies tried to prevent him from doing so. They even went so far as to file a legal complaint to destroy his work once and for all. In March 1955, the public prosecutor's office in Munich filed a charge against him. The main charges were violation of the non-medical practitioner law and one case of involuntary manslaughter. The first proceedings began at the end of July and the beginning of August 1957, the second one in January 1958. Final judgment, however, was never passed because both charges were contested by appeal. After a slowdown through the higher courts, finally, on the 22nd of January 1959 at 9 a.m., the higher regional court in Munich was ready to proceed towards a decision. The proceedings, however, took place without Gröning, who at this time had been placed on the operating table of a cancer clinic in Paris. Although Gröning had already been operated on December the 8th, a second operation became necessary as he had developed a severe colon blockage. Unfortunately, the doctors could not help Gröning anymore. On the 26th of January 1959 at 1:46 p.m. he died in Paris. Although the cause of his death was described as stomach cancer, the surgeon who performed Gröning's operations said after the second one, "The destruction within Bruno's body is terrible. It is totally burned up." Bruno Gröning often stated, "If they forbid me to do my work, I shall totally burn up internally." After the death of the accused, the trial was declared closed, and a final judgment was never given. The body was cremated and the ashes were interred at Dillenburg Cemetery. Was this the end?
Die tausenden Menschen, die geheilt waren, sind weggelaufen und haben gesagt, Herr Gröning ist tot, es ist aus, beendet. Aber einige
Thousands of people who were healed ran away and said, "Mr. Gröning is dead, now everything is finished, it's the end." But several friends, myself included, did not run away. For me, the reason was that I continued to feel the healing stream, just as I felt it at the time when he was among us. When I was present at the first healing after he was gone, I remembered what he had said when he was my guest in 1952. I asked him, "Mr. Gröning, how will it be when you shall have died one day? I cannot visualize a life without your help anymore." He gave me the following answer: "All human beings must die one day. I too shall die, but although the body is placed into the ground, I shall not be dead. And if anyone calls me then, I shall come and continue to help. When it comes to this point in time, anybody will be able to receive help and healing from within himself." At that time, I could not understand what he said to me. It was too abstract, but now, after the first healing without him on this earth, I remembered what he said, and now I understand him. The various kinds of help and healing in everyday life continue to occur.
Nach der ersten Heilung erinnerte ich mich daran und jetzt verstehe ich das. Und die Heilungen und die Hilfen jeglichster Art im täglichen Leben erfolgen in ganz, ganz großem Umfang weiter.
In the spring of 1985, I became acquainted with the Bruno Gröning circle of friends. I had had angina pectoris, chronic sinus inflammation for about 25 years, and had been operated on twice, but with no success. For many years I had suffered from bronchitis, and I also had heartburn, hiccups, and prostrate problems when urinating. I was healed of all these complaints, spontaneously. I am free of them now, I have no more complaints, and I feel very well.
Als ich in die Gemeinschaft kam, hatte ich ein schweres Bandscheibenleiden mit Lähmung.
When I came to the Bruno Gröning circle of friends, I had a severe slipped intervertebral disc and symptoms of lameness in my right leg. I had sciatica complaints, and the doctor told me that one of these days I would end up in a wheelchair. I had myomas in the uterus and was advised to have a hysterectomy. Also, I was afflicted with stomach and bowel colics and severe depressions. I came to the Bruno Gröning community in 1984. I lost my depressions almost immediately, spontaneously. The myomas disappeared after a few weeks, so did my anxiety attacks. It took 2 to 3 years before I was healed of my slipped disc complaints. Since then, I'm completely free of everything.
Seit meinem 15. Lebensjahr hatte ich mit Drogen zu tun. Am Anfang war es Haschisch.
Since I was 15 years old, I have been involved with drugs. In the beginning, it was marijuana, Captagon, AN1, alcohol. In later years, I added LSD, and finally cocaine, which I took regularly several times daily. Through Bruno Gröning's teachings, I have become healthy once again and free of drugs, without having experienced any physical or psychical withdrawal symptoms.
Vor 18 Jahren war ich sehr belastet. Ich hatte eine verschlissene Bandscheibe, eine
18 years ago, I had many health complaints. I had an injured disc and a sprained cervical vertebrae due to an accident. I had a metabolic disorder for 12 years, digestive complaints for 25 years, and rheumatism on both sides of the spinal column for 19 years. In addition, my blood pressure was extremely low. I had kidney stones and constant kidney problems. I'm a nurse by profession and had access to many medical treatments and therapies. I had to take 15 pills minimum per day. Then I came to the Bruno Gröning circle of friends, and overnight I experienced a spontaneous healing of all my complaints. I don't take any pills anymore. I have stopped all treatments and therapies. I work again in my profession, and I can handle all responsibilities. I am a healthy person now.
When I was 14 or 15 years old, I started to suffer from many backaches. When I was 17, I went to the doctor who diagnosed Scheuermann's disease. After a period of 2 years, the same diagnosis was made, this time from the outside of the body. Before that, the illness could only be seen by X-raying. It was determined that my illness had worsened. I was 22 years old when I came to the Bruno Gröning community. In the beginning, I could not believe in the healings. For about 2 years, I continued to be skeptical, but finally I was convinced. After a year and a half, I was free of pain for the first time. I then had a medical checkup, and the doctors found that everything was healed except 3 vertebrae. Half a year later, these 3 were also healed, which was shown by the X-rays. These now look like the spinal column of any other healthy person, and my life is now free of pain.
Kommt, wird in die Lehre Bruno Grönings eingeführt. Und somit wird
How is healing achieved?
When a health seeker comes to us asking for help, he or she will be introduced to the teachings of Bruno Gröning. The person will be taught to be prepared to receive the healing power. This healing power cleanses, orders, and heals. The concept of curable is never in any doubt. Often, the actual healing is preceded by what we call regulations or regulatory phase, the symptoms of which might be the following: feeling hot or cold, or feeling of itching or of pins and needles. Also pains of differing severity. If the health and help seeker during this period continues to adhere to the teachings of Bruno Gröning and believes that his ailments will be taken away from him by a healing stream from God, then the healing comes often very quickly. The body, by being thoroughly cleansed, will be free and throw off the illness. This occurs quickly for some, slowly for others. It depends on the person himself.
Regularly, every 3 weeks, community meetings take place. We teach and discuss the teachings of Bruno Gröning. Health successes are reported, and we practice together the reception of the healing stream. Additionally, twice yearly, the various regions conduct weekend meetings. We have a special success report group which gathers the success reports of all healed persons. There is also a circle of doctors who examine these success reports and make comments from a medical standpoint. Apart from educational papers and cassettes, which are given free of charge to all Bruno Gröning friends, we also have quite a comprehensive collection of Bruno Gröning literature, which is published by Grete Häusler. Grete Häusler also publishes art postcards, music cassettes, posters, and children's books. The publisher has endeavored to make available to the general public Bruno Gröning's closeness to God, his line of thought, insights, philosophy, in short, his teachings. All human beings should be given the opportunity to receive help and healing through Bruno Gröning.
Ist der Bruno Gröning Freundeskreis eine Sekte?
Ja, Herr Gröning ist selbst gefragt worden.
Is the Bruno Gröning Circle of Friends a sect?
Bruno Gröning himself was asked the same question. He said, "No, it is not a sect." His will is that every friend should remain with his own religion. Bruno Gröning never intended to found a new religion. The Catholics should stay in Catholic circles, the evangelicals or Protestants should go to their respective churches, the Orthodox should stay Orthodox. There are Buddhists and Mohammedans in the circle of friends, which is non-denominational. But men and women should find here in the circle of friends once again a renewal or refortification of their belief in God. As to financing the circle of friends, no member contribution is expected, but it is customary for all friends, including myself, to show their thankfulness for their own healings by working voluntarily. All costs are covered by voluntary donations.
Das aus Dankbarkeit für die eigene Heilung tun und das ganze Werk sich aus freiwilliger Spenden finanziert.
30 Jahre lang.
For 30 years, I suffered from very serious back pains due to misalignment of the spinal column. For 10 years, I had circulatory problems in both my legs. For 20 years, I suffered deep depressions. In 1988, I received Bruno Gröning's teachings and was healed spontaneously. To this day, I am a healthy and happy person.
I had hearing difficulties caused by a fall. The ear specialist I consulted found out that I had only 45% hearing ability. He suggested a hearing aid, but I refused it. Later, I became acquainted with the Bruno Gröning community, and after approximately a quarter of a year, I noticed that my hearing ability was fully restored. I then went to another ear specialist and had another hearing test done. He confirmed that I had 100% hearing ability.
Und stellte die 100%ige Hörfähigkeit fest.
Since I was a small child, I'd had bronchial and lung problems. In the hospital, it was found out that I was allergic to many foods, blooming plants, animals, house dust, etc. I had sneezing and bronchial attacks repeatedly every month. My skin was very dry, and I had eczema in the back of my knees and on my elbows and on my neck. I had to apply cream to the whole of my body after a bath, otherwise I got cracked skin. In addition, I had a weak bladder, caught bladder colds, and was often in pain. One day I was introduced to the teachings of Bruno Gröning. I gained strength and came to believe that everything might improve. After a short while, my bladder was healed. Now I can run around barefoot and stay outside in the cold. I don't need to put cream over my whole body anymore, not even after taking a bath. I don't have any more eczema. I can eat everything again. I can sweep the room myself, can smell flowers, handle animals without sneezing attacks, and my bronchi are completely in order. The physicians were convinced that this was incurable.
Gottes durfte ich die Heilung erleben. Wie ich vor gut 2 Jahren
2 years ago, when I came to the teachings of Bruno Gröning, I was very ill because of being in a mine disaster. 2 intervertebral discs in my neck were completely broken. For several years I had been going to therapists. It didn't help. Even the doctor in the hospital confirmed that this was incurable. Through the teachings of Bruno Gröning, I received healing. Through working in a mine, my knees had become worn out. After a few weeks, I noticed that here too I had received healing. Now I am without pain. I also went to the hospital, and a doctor whom I had never seen before confirmed the healing after close examination. Since 1981, I had had leukemia. This was diagnosed during tests in hospital. My blood was in complete disorder. And again, through Bruno Gröning, I received healing also from this ailment. This was documented by a physician too.